Matt. The red light's on, so this is go time. This is when all the pressure is to make magic happen on Zoom. So hopefully you guys are ready. Hopefully you're ready. You're all pumped up.
Ready for it. I've been
awesome. Well, let's start with my first. Cool. Cool. Let's start with my first question. What'd you have for breakfast this morning?
Oh, it was a rough morning because I've already done an investor call, so I had about 5 minutes for breakfast. I had an English muffin and an orange. Really creative.
Hey, that's tasty. Anything on that
I
muffin?
Forgot to have coffee. I didn't even
no
have
coffee, huh? Hey, that's all right.
Oh,
I'm not a coffee drinker though, so
Really?
I'm an orange juice guy. Yeah, I've never. I mean, I smell it, but I've never even had a cup. That's not my world. So no coffee in my world. Yeah. So cool. Well, let's jump right into it. So why don't you tell my listeners, who you are and what you're currently raising money for over on Indiegogo.
So my name is Matt Hassett. I'm the CEO and founder of Loftie, Loftie. And Loftie is sort of like an alarm clock, but our main goal is to get the phone out of the bedroom so you can get a better night's rest. Having the phone in the bedroom, not great for your sleep. So not so good. You want to replace the screen time with a little sleep time. Yeah. Recommend that. And we started out with a broader mission of tech-life balance, and we're all about helping people design their environment to have a better relationship with technology. And we landed on winding down and waking up as the time where we could really make the biggest difference.
Sure.
And people were really wanting that. Maybe they are okay having their phone on the subway, if we ever start taking the subway again. But other times, not so much. So yeah, the Loftie places the phone at night, so you can leave your smartphone out in the kitchen or whatever, and then use the Loftie to wind down and wake up.
That's cool. So what is this alarm clock doing that would be different than just your average alarm clock that I might already have?
Yeah, so it has a lot on it, a lot of tech that is very minimalistic and subtle, but quite a bit of power behind it. So it has content you can wind down to, so your own content, whether it's Spotify or a podcast, your podcast or someone else.
Yeah, the subtle podcast. Voices of my tones just in your eardrums.
Yeah. There is that podcast series, Sleep With Me. A lot of people love that. Scooter, he talks in this kind of sputtery way.
Right.
It's cool. But yeah, either that, your own content, or we have our own content as well. So you can listen to breath work, meditation, sound baths, stories, both for adults and for kids. And then unlike your basic alarm clock you might find on Amazon, you can, ironically enough, set it with your phone if you want. So you're out in the day earlier, you can set it. You could also create a sleep playlist earlier in the day, I want to listen to this podcast at night, I'll just add it to my Loftie, and then you can play it later on at night without having to have your phone there, because looking at the phone screen, the blue light on the phone before bed is going to push back the release of melatonin and the start of your sleep wind down. When your circadian rhythms are saying go to bed, the blue light says alert, I'm up.
Right.
So if we can get rid of that, but still keep the modern conveniences, that should help you sleep better.
And am I using an app to control a lot of this stuff, or is the tech in the alarm clock?
It's in there. So you can
cool.
do everything on Loftie. If you want to use it as a Bluetooth speaker, you can do that, but it's much more than a Bluetooth speaker.
Right.
You can actually navigate any menu, and you can play content, you can set the alarm and that kind of thing.
That's cool.
Or set a timer or whatever right on the device itself.
That's cool. So I guess for you then, where was the start of this journey to, designing an alarm clock like we're talking about right now? What were you struggling with, and you decided, I'll either fix this problem or I want to jump into this?
Yeah, I would never have in a million years thought I would design an alarm clock.
Yeah.
And alarm clock is limiting too, because it's kind of this new category in its own way. Right. But I was at IDEO, the design firm, I was in the New York office as an entrepreneur in residence in 2017, and was hearing my colleagues around the kitchen table saying, I deleted Instagram for the weekend, or like I finally got off Facebook, and I just realized that people really wanted less of it, but in the moment they want so much more of it. And it's
right.
It's like type 2 versus type 1 like thinking, where type 2 is like, be good to yourself. Like, don't spend the next hour on Instagram.
Right.
And type 1 is like, keep scrolling. So people go back and forth between those two mindsets. And originally it was more of an app. It was an app. And the first one was totally out there and was just almost like a cryptocurrency for spending time offline. It was like Steve Case's from 1990, whatever he started AOL. Like the opposite of that. Like, let's get America offline. Like, and we'll pay you to be offline. And it was almost like almost a joke. Yeah. But worked on that and then turned it into an app that gave you rewards for being offline. Like a SoulCycle class or a juice or a coffee or something. And like added some competitive elements and teams and stuff. And then still felt like that was not the right angle. And ended up working with a SoulCycle instructor. And also she was a marketer and copywriter for SoulCycle. And we did a lot of like research around other analogous things. So we did like the Sakara plant-based diet, for instance, where they send you meal kits. And we were thinking about like what could be in the kit, like if we had a kit, if there was a digital detox kit.
Right.
And one of those things was an alarm clock. And there were several other products too, but the alarm clock was really interesting because we spoke to a few friends who had wanted to get the phone out of their bedroom, and they couldn't find one they wanted to buy because they were usually really ugly or like hard to set or not reliable. So this alarm clock turned out to be like kind of the keystone object of spending less time on your phone.
Yeah, that's cool. So, once you kind of identify this, it seems like that's a big jump into actually making something. So, how do you then start to say, oh, now I'll make a physical hardware product and start that process?
Yeah. I wish I had known I'd be making a physical product, because I would have taken like 1 or 2 different classes in grad school.
Right. Yeah.
But luckily I'd taken enough HBS classes about new companies and startups that I had the vague sense of where to go. And I had this IDEO network from having been an IDEO client and then been an entrepreneur in residence 2 summers. So a lot of our team is from IDEO. And we ended up working with an industrial designer out of Somerville, Boston, Massachusetts, Greg Wolos, who worked with us, and we put together an IDEO-based design research methodology. Greg had worked for IDEO Cambridge for about 7 years before going out on his own. And so we pursued a full design research process, interviewing likely customers in their home, talking to them about how they go to bed, wake up, how do they use their phone.
Right.
And we use that to inform our design principles. And then also we're bringing a lot of what IDEO would call sacrificial concepts into their home, kind of things that were a little extreme, not super extreme, but something that would provoke a reaction. So we would get a lot of feedback. Would it be a wearable? Would it be like a strike of a chime? Would it have numbers at all? Did it need numbers? What kind of sounds played on it? Does it need to tell the weather? That kind of thing. And from those principles, we narrowed it down, and we got to the current design. And then since then, I've been working with this really excellent product development company based in New York and Hong Kong, called Doris Dev that has been helping with the engineering, supply chain, production, distribution, all of that.
Wow.
I can tell you more about that, but they've been a great partner.
That's great. So in this process of kind of almost putting together, it sounds like a really advanced buyer persona or like customer persona, like this is who we think it's going to be, and designing. What are you personally doing inside of all that to either organize it, navigate it, ask the questions, read the data? Like what are you doing inside of that?
Could you explain a little more? What am I personally doing?
Yeah, what are you personally doing inside of? Are you doing all of it? Are you organizing these team members? Are you looking for people? Are you reading the data or that says this is what we think our customer is? Are you the decision maker in a lot of that?
Yeah, I'm involved in every part of it. So there's very little I don't work on, right, for better or worse. So yeah, I was there on a lot of the customer interviews, and I personally create all the type form surveys that we've been sending out during the Indiegogo campaign, and I read everyone's input, and I'm working on scheduling calls with a lot of customers from Indiegogo and also potential customers who haven't bought it yet but are on our email list.
Yeah,
and I will be one of the team that speaks to them on the phone and asks them about their experience and their thoughts on our product.
That's cool.
In my former career, I used to work in a very different world, affordable housing in New York, and I worked a lot with mortgage companies because it was a lot of dealing with the fallout of the mortgage crisis. And I got to work with the former CEO of a company called Aquin, which is a mortgage company, and I was very impressed that every Friday, this CEO of this pretty large company spends the morning just listening to tape of customer calls with his staff, just to make sure they're getting the experience that he'd want them to get, which I'm sure really keeps the customer service team on their toes too, knowing that he does that. But I was impressed by that. So I've always wanted to be like very close, and you have to be when you're just starting, and we've sold 1,600 Lofties so far on Indiegogo, but and that's like a big number from zero. But it's also those are the first 1,600 customers, and their opinion really matters, and we can learn so much from them.
Yeah, definitely. So how long does it take for you to get what we see in the Indiegogo page in terms of that? I don't know if it's the final prototype or it's like really close, or how long did it take you from, interviewing some people to get their feedback to like, hey, I'm holding something,
Yeah. The sort of idea to even do this at all, this product, was January 2019.
Okay.
Worked with Greg, the designer, over the summer. We first worked with another industrial designer in Amsterdam, and we went to Amsterdam. It didn't turn out to be the right fit for us, but it was really interesting and we learned a lot. Then we worked with Greg, and then I started working with Doris Dev, the product development company, officially in January. We brought a early prototype, like a very, plasticky, gutsy prototype, to CES this year, in January, and then I think we had the first prototype in February. We had a looks like prototype that looked exactly like it, and then we had a looks like works like prototype in March, and that's really advanced. The one I shipped to a reporter 2 days ago, so I don't have one right here, but that one works fully. So that's what we used in the video, and we wanted to have a prototype that actually functioned the way we showed it. So there's no like computer imagery or anything. It's just filming that prototype.
It's cool
for the video we did for Indiegogo.
Yeah, that seems like actually a pretty quick timeline in terms of getting something that because it seems like you've got a lot in it, right? There's a lot of little things that have to be happening in terms of potentially, it sounds like Bluetooth has to be a part of it. And, it sounds like you made content too for it. So it seems like that's a pretty quick turnaround at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was, I mean, it's a big team, and a lot of really excellent folks working on it. So it was definitely not just me doing all that. So over a dozen people making That's it happen.
Cool. So maybe during that time frame, this sounds like about a year and a half or so, or a year and 3 months. What was keeping you up at night? What was the driving, like, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to do this?
I think before finding the right product development company, it was okay, I worked with this amazing industrial designer. Who's the company that's going to help push this to production, and is not going to bankrupt Loftie, taking years to do it,
right?
And is not going to do it in the way that things were done in earlier products. I think some of the firms I talked to just hadn't really ever done something in kind of an agile framework that you would use on most software companies, and it was just clearly dated. And so I'm working with a really great software developer who brings that kind of philosophy, and he is in charge of all the software side of it. And then Doris Dev is helping with the production, and they are behind a lot of the well-known the direct-to-consumer companies that you see out there. So Gravity Blankets and Blue Land, By Humankind, Great Jones, pattern brands like Equal Parts Open Spaces. So they have this infrastructure that is able to just like very quickly bring products to market. The founders of it were with a company called Quirky, which, do you remember Quirky? It would solicit ideas from you. You would see an ad on the New York City subway saying like, got an idea? Like, we'll make it a product.
Right.
And that company eventually went out of business. They kind of made too many products, but the team had this deep expertise. And so a lot of that team remains in Doris Dev, and they're able to really quickly prototype and design. And so that's how we've been able to move so quickly.
Wow. That's cool. You know, a lot of people I talk to and project creators have a real sense of like holding on to everything, you know, like, oh, I can do this. I'll do this. I'll do this. And maybe rightfully so. You know, what was in you to say, no, I'm going to go find people. I'm going to go find the best that can do this. I'm going to relinquish some control. I'm going to still be a part of it, but I don't know if that's a default setting for a lot of people. So was it something you were conscious about? Was it something that you just knew, like, for this to be successful, you had to do what you're talking about in terms of navigating lots of people, lots of bodies, that sort of stuff?
That's interesting. I've kind of never realized that about myself, but this has actually been a helpful self-reflection. So I appreciate that.
Wonderful.
I think my skill is finding the right people, making sure that they're a cultural fit with the organization, and making sure that I think they're the best person I could possibly find for the project within, the budget reason. I actually don't think we could find better people than the people we have on it. But I don't know what it's like to have a VC budget of hundreds of millions of dollars. I have a feeling it would be slower and not as efficient. So, but I think I found very specialized people who are really good at the particular thing they do, and they work together really well. And it's very expensive, and it's definitely not everyone's way of going about it. Like, I have several other founder friends who have emailed me lately saying, how's your Instagram so good, and how are you growing it so quickly, and do you use an agency? And actually it's like at least a half dozen people, all of whom are expert in their field, whether it's copywriting or photography or graphic design, multiple types of graphic designers. And all of that comes together to create a brand. And a lot of people just don't invest in that. And I, for better or worse, am a big believer in the importance of that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, for the people who want to find team members. And I know this is something that actually, as my own agency, we struggle with, is what are you looking for to identify culture, like you're the right person, you believe in it, you see the vision, you're not just here for the paycheck, which, you know, obviously it's a part of it, but like there really does have to be somebody that wants a little bit more to especially play in the startup world of like, you know, this is, you know, the reality is that this could also die, right? Like that's a part of this whole culture too. So you really have to find a special person, I feel like. So what are you asking? What are you looking for? What do you want from somebody to be on the team?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, they really have to be passionate about what they do. So like Ryan, our software developer, like loves what he does, and it gets him really excited to work with Raspberry Pis, prototyping, and like to dive like really deep into code. And like we made early prototypes with him, and he actually personally soldered it together. And
that's cool.
Like he's just incredibly passionate. George, who's our design director, and I met at IDEO back in 2016. Has a very strong like anti-social media, like sort of distrust of social media, and so he was kind of, he's in it for the mission, and he, you know, brings a lot of clarity around that, and so he'll kind of tie things back to the mission. And he is someone who's just very passionate about the idea. I think he actually said we're never going to be an alarm clock company, and I don't think we're an alarm clock company.
Right.
I think he's surprised probably where it's turned out from what it started out early, but he's very happy about it. And one of our copywriters, I remember my first meeting with him talking about the social media and kind of the internet generally as like kind of slowly like taking over, and like we were in this like basically a spacesuit and the water was filling up. It was like very dark and dystopian, and that's kind of like his personal life. He like has this view, and he's writing the screenplay about it. Yeah. But he's able to like pull himself back from the brink to like think like, hey, actually we could be positive about this, and that's, you know, through Loftie. And so it's just very like cute and fun tone to our brand, versus like his science fiction screenwriting career. So yeah, people that really are very excited by it. I think I wouldn't want to work with anyone who was just kind of phoning it in, or didn't get the mission.
Sure. How much have you, so this is something that I think I've seen more and more kind of leaking into my emails I'm getting, my social media feeds around, you know, the stigma around I have to be a workaholic, right? Like I gotta be this guy who's on all the time, and I don't need to sleep, and I need to be plugged in all the time. And because I think that was a major thing probably for the last maybe 10 years or so. Like, oh, if you're not hustling, you know, the Gary Vaynerchuk type stuff. Like if you're not hustling, you're not, you know, and it's like, I have
rise and grind. Yeah.
Right. It's like, no, I need 10 hours of sleep, 8 hours, whatever it is. I just need good sleep. Are you finding that the culture, that maybe your timing is on point too right now, that we're kind of shifting a little bit around like, listen, if you didn't sleep all night, you're probably going to be an asshole the next day. Like, you know, like, you know, like, are you guys feeling from what you guys are looking to research, all that sort of stuff, that like maybe we're all coming to the reality of like, we're supposed to sleep, like, you know, as people?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely our brand ethos and what we believe personally. I think that the culture is shifting that way. A lot of our taglines are a reaction to that. So like doing stuff is for later, or like busy culture is bullshit, or stuff like that. So we think that if there's not a shift, there should be a shift. You really do need 8 hours of sleep. And the amount of medical conditions that are tied to lack of sleep is really shocking. There's a wonderful book called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, which sort of like a guide star for me, how I learned a lot about sleep. And if you read that book, you'll really think twice about, you know, getting by on 5 hours of sleep, because it's not, here's one fact from that book. And for example, like getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep, it's not like it's a proportional thing. Like, oh, I still got, you know, 70% Great. Well, actually, you probably didn't hit REM, and that is really important for memory consolidation, for learning, for processing information. So your brain is not working properly if you're not getting enough sleep, and long term, it leads to a lot of really unhealthy conditions. Yeah. So yeah, and smartphones don't make it easier because there's always something new. The authors of the Google Sprint book, they have a new book, year old or so, that talks about infinity pools. It talks about Instagram and Netflix as infinity pools of content where like they never run out of content. You can never get through them.
Right.
And when you're up against an infinity pool, it's hard to pull yourself away.
Not going to win that battle.
Not going
to win it. Yeah, I'll tell you. Well, one of the reasons I reached out too is that this was personally, like my dad just he did not sleep. I don't know how he just passed away recently, but like he didn't sleep. I mean, we're talking 4 or 5 hours, 3 hours. He'd be up all the time, and medical, a gazillion medical conditions, right? And he died when he's 65, right? And it's like, dude. So, but so for myself personally, it's like I picked up the one of these guys to track my sleeping, making sure I'm like on point. My phone is now hidden somewhere. So like I'm that guy who started to make these conscious decisions of like, whoa, there's something in the Wenzel DNA that says we don't need to go to sleep. And I was like, nope. So it's a high thing. So let's talk about when does Indiegogo or crowdfunding start to enter your guys' conversation of like, hey, we should maybe try this?
Yeah. So one of the like main takeaways for me from a class on early stage companies at HBS was be extremely wary of venture capital money. And it's a little presumptuous for me because who knows if venture capitalists even want to fund Loftie. I don't know. But I read so many cases of people kind of taking on too much money or finding the wrong investor and just having totally warped priorities.
That's me. You can, I'm your case study for that. That's
really?
Getting into crowdfunding. Yeah, I had a.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I used to have 4 recording studios, and I was franchising this whole business model with VC money. And then I was never gonna my business model was never gonna be a hockey stick. Like we were never gonna be a Dropbox or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. I've created really good businesses. Like and they're like, yeah, but it's not enough. I'm like, yeah, they're making like lots of money. What? And it was just never enough. And then I started making decisions based on, not good business practices just to try to make a dollar. And in the music business, man, that's just not how a lot of stuff works. So yeah, I'm your case study for like, hey, be very cautious when you go down that rabbit hole. So
yeah, I remember the most poignant was a case on a company I believe called Mattermark, and the founder came in and she was looking at revenues of, I think like $10 million a year or something, like great revenue, but not nearly enough for what they had.
Right.
So yeah, I that's in the back of my mind. And then I was fortunate to inherited some money when my grandfather passed away. And I used a lot of that money to fund the development before Indiegogo. And then I was looking for the right financing fit to what we wanted to do. And there's not a lot of great options when you want to create a physical product where it requires like a large investment upfront, both of the engineering and all the technical know-how, and also then the tooling and like the manufacturing aspect, plus like the variable cost of each unit. So crowdfunding is such a good fit for that. And I think that explains why there's so many of these kind of hardware projects. It's just hard to find investors, I think, who believe in that, or even if they want to believe, like they have probably been burned on something,
right?
And they don't trust their intuition, so they want to see product market fit, and they want to see consumer demand. So I figured, why waste my time going into a bunch of VCs to be told come back in 6 months when you have revenue and customers? And I would just like focus on getting customers. So Indiegogo or Kickstarter made sense for that. And I have been very happy with what we've done so far. As I said, we've sold 1,600 Lofties so far on Indiegogo.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, that's what we haven't even really talked about Indiegogo yet. So let's talk about like the numbers. When we're talking right now, you've got still a healthy amount of time left, but yeah, the amount of backers is amazing. You're up to about 100, just under 170,000 when we're talking right now, which when this comes out, it'll be more than that. What was some of the metrics you were looking for to tell you that you were ready to launch, right? Like, you know, what were you looking for? Something that says, okay, I think we're now ready. We have emails, we have data. I don't know whatever it was, but when did you know you were ready?
I think for us, it was, you know, the emails and the data was on the fly, like learning how to do that as we were getting ready to launch. I was really waiting to have a prototype that was very close to what we would actually be selling. I could have done a crowdfunding campaign much earlier with renders and with the idea, but I wanted to wait till we had something and we could put up a production schedule. Yeah. So like the last part of our page on Indiegogo has a detailed timeline of the dates, and those are right from Doorstev's dates. So that was the main metric for me. And then once we knew we were in the right time frame, also, I mean, the time frame is also driven from when we need to pay for the tooling and pay for the all the costs that go with manufacturing it. So we're working already with our manufacturer, and so the timing will work out pretty perfectly to be able to pay for this first run with this money, which I don't think always happens. So the people who are paying for all the work that's come before, like I picked up the tab personally on that one, and then they're really truly paying for like their product. And we definitely were racing to get a lot of emails before launching. I think we got around 25,000 emails, but I think Indiegogo's little spreadsheet would have said we should have had like 36,000 or something higher. Yeah. And we kind of went with what we had. Yeah.
It's cool. What, you know, throughout this campaign, what has been the thing that maybe has stood out the most that you maybe just did not have any expectations of? Like, wow, I did not expect us to be big in Brazil or what? I don't know. I don't know. Is there something that's just been like totally crazy that you just had no idea about?
Well, yeah. I mean, on that note, it is interesting how without spending $1 in advertising outside of the US, now the UK, we're spending some money on advertising, but we did not spend any money outside of the US initially. And not even just from Indiegogo's platform, but for whatever reason, we've had a lot of inbound interest from most countries, a lot of countries. So we are actually, I think later today, I'll be going and making this change go live, but we're actually going to expand from just shipping to the US and the UK to shipping to Canada, and shipping to the entire EU. I believe the entire EU. Slight caveat. I need to look at.
Sure oh, yes, you do.
There's a regulatory hurdle. Really, is the main thing, which I don't think people understand when they email saying like, "Can you please just send one to X country?" And it's like, well, to send it to you, we'd have to go through a regulatory test with your country's regulators, and that costs $5,000. So we'd have to sell a lot of Lofties. But we actually are going to invest in the regulatory testing for most of the EU and for the US and Canada. So we're going to expand that. And we actually just extended the campaign duration today in part for that reason. Cool. And then I'd say a couple other things we didn't expect. One, just I think the intensity of engagement is really strong, and that's really great when you think about early adopter customers, and you're told to expect they really have a lot of interest in your product and want to give a lot of feedback. But when you're actually getting it, like it's you definitely are kind of just amazed that people are so interested, you know?
Right.
It's like you buy something on Amazon, you're not like commenting in, like saying like, have you considered using an OLED screen on that device?
Right.
But they are on our product, right? And Indiegogo is kind of set up for that. And then one other thing is, and I had sort of like gotten the lay of the land at this conference called TransTech, Transformative Technology. But there's a pretty large population of people who are very concerned about EMF frequencies and exposure to radiation. And so there have been a lot of questions about how much Wi-Fi signal or EMF Loftie gives off. So, that's helped us design the product in a way that's going to be inclusive of that community as well. So having the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth shut off either manually or automatically, things like that. It's going to be nowhere near what your cell phone gives off, but thinking about that kind of consideration.
That's interesting. Yeah, I would have definitely never thought about that. That's interesting. So once the campaign ends, money drops in bank accounts and all that sort of stuff, dust sort of settles on this. What starts to happen for you to get alarm clocks in people's hands?
Yeah, well, that money goes right out of our bank account and goes to the manufacturer to pay for a lot of like very particular tools that will make just Lofties. That's our summer and early fall plan, really going through those stages. And we laid out those stages on the Indiegogo page, but the one we're in right now is the engineering validation testing, which means bringing all the the production components together and assembling a product with those. Our prototype is, not to be cocky, but I think it's pretty advanced for the typical Indiegogo prototype because it was designed by Dorstev's engineering team, and it's it all actually, like, there's no like loose wires in there or something, like it all fits together in their custom parts. And but this one will be the final parts. So and then that can be used for a lot of testing. And then after that, you're on to your tooling, where you actually make the steel molds that the Lofties are made in, the exterior is made out of, and you're ordering your components. So you're ordering, 5,000 displays and 10,000 buttons and that kind of thing, amassing those at the factory, and then doing what's called a design validation testing run, DVT. And we're projecting that for August, and that's where you actually pour plastic into the molds, make the devices, assemble them just like they will be for the final run. We make about 50 to 100 of those. We'll be using those for kind of our final user testing round, getting them into people's homes, making sure they like everything about it, sending them to press, influencers, that kind of thing.
That's awesome. And then for you, I guess, as a CEO of this, what does like this next 5 years look like? Like, what are you hoping this company turns into? I mean, you mentioned you're not just selling alarm clocks, right? So what do you guys envision? Is it multiple products? Is it just staying in this industry, like the sleep industry that you're in? What's your fortune looking out when you're looking in the ball? Yeah. What's it look like?
Yeah. So it's intently focused on this one product right now, but there is a bigger product roadmap, and they're all products that help to subtly create tech life balance. So there's definitely a kids version of this. I think there'll be some kind of like accessories that make it more kid friendly just in its own right, but we'll also have a version that's especially for kids. There's some other products that pair with it. Like one of the things that some people want with a alarm clock is a wake up light, and you can design your smart alarm clock to be a wake up light, but it ends up looking like a floodlight, and it's pretty heinous. So I just don't love the design, and it takes up a ton of room on your nightstand, and also like most of the ones we've looked at, the user experience is pretty clunky.
Yeah.
So we have plans to make a lamp that connects to Loftie and seamlessly adds that wake up light functionality without having to have this kind of weird other object on your nightstand.
Right.
Those are some of the things. We also have this other side to our business, which is a subscription model. We actually simplified this. We were saying initially on Indiegogo that you would get a free 1-year subscription to our premium content, but I think it was too nuanced a message, and people were worried that it would be like Sonos bricking their speakers, and they would have bought this thing and then they wouldn't be able to get white noise or whatever it was that they wanted. And that was never our intention at all. We'd always have all the features on it, but it's more like replicating the things that you might have been doing on your phone in a better way, like on the device. So
yeah,
meditation, sound baths, and stories. Like, how can we make that something you can do without your phone? And we think we could add a few tweaks at least. And there's a lot of content creators, and we don't presume to know that we're going to be any better, but we do have some ideas about what we could do better. And I think there is a gap in like the calm headspace world, especially for more like variety and instructors. So with our content that's available now on our app, we have an app that's available for iOS and Android. We have a breathwork instructor who is also a soul cycle instructor out of Washington, D.C. And then we have a sound bath practitioner who is based in Brooklyn. And those are like creeping into the more mainstream meditation apps as well. But they're not like the main focus. And I think there's room for more variety.
Sure.
So yeah, we're excited about that. And there's so many creators.
Yeah. I mean, content creation. I mean, everybody's making something. We're making something right now.
You make something, yeah.
Yeah, we're doing it right now. We're in the middle of it. Man, this is awesome. So I've been wrapping up all my podcasts since the world we all had to start hunkering down. So if you're into it, I'm going to ask you 5 or 6 questions here, not about the product or anything like that. So if you're ready to go, it's almost like a little lightning round type of thing.
All right.
Are you ready? What have you been watching? Maybe on the old Netflix or the Hulus or the HBOs, whatever it is. What have you been watching that's caught your fancy?
Yeah, I have been enjoying. I watched Breaking Bad, but I never watched Better Call Saul. So I've been watching that and enjoying Bob Odenkirk in all his glory. Yeah, been loving that. It's dark and tragic, but hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, what's the writer? Vince
Gilligan, I think.
I mean, man, he made what a piece of work to tie all that stuff together, all these storylines and like characters and just all the little nuances of like, hey, I think that's Tuco.
Yeah.
Or what, in some random episode. It's so great. How about a movie? Have you watched a movie recently that you really like?
I think I've been at first during COVID, like most people, I sort of plunged too much into the news and too much into the dark. And I did enjoy watching, is it Dennis Hoffman in Outbreak?
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
I thought Outbreak was actually great. And I really loved it. I love seeing like Morgan Freeman as this like not quite perfect character. Usually he's like just immaculate and he's like the hero. And but this one, like there's a little darkness to him with this other like shady general who's the real bad guy, and Morgan Freeman like is on the edge, and then he ends up doing the right thing. But that was a fun time, and I don't know, it's kind of this twisted thing of watching a movie like that in this strange time.
Yeah, that's great. How about a book? Any book? You big book reader at all?
Yeah, I'm looking over at my nightstand. I've been reading this. I have a hard time reading like work related books right now. So I've been reading Good Habits, Bad Habits I think it's Windy Wood. Yeah, Windy Wood. And it's all about how we can set ourselves up for better behavior or better life by thinking about our habits. And a lot of it actually seeps into how we designed Loftie. I read a lot of books like that.
Yeah.
And took a lot of classes on behavioral psychology. One thing I loved about that, I found out about it through a New Yorker article about it that cited this little finding from the Stanford marshmallow experiment, where kids are given a snack and are told they can get 2 if they can wait 15 minutes or so. And a lot of kids break and don't do it, and they eat it. And some kids wait a long time, and those kids tend to have a later in life, like higher success and kind of some more traditional metrics like test scores and income, stuff like that. But there's also this little condition I didn't really know about until I read her book, where in addition to those kind of overall variables, there's also like when the experimenter left the treat in the room, was it covered or uncovered? Could the kids see it or not? And it turns out like if it was covered, the kids lasted like a lot longer. They were able to like keep it out of there.
Wow.
Yeah. So that actually has a pretty good analogy to Loftie. So if you can keep your phone somewhere else and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, it's going to be less tempting, and you're going to be less likely to, break the addiction, break the temptation. So
yeah,
I found that really interesting.
I bet that sounds great. Well, where can people learn more, dive in? Where should we be sending people right now?
I think they could either go to Indiegogo and just look for us there, or they could go to our website, which is byloftie.com, byloftie.com.
Cool.
That's the safest place to look if you're looking after mid-June, because we'll be selling on our own website after the Indiegogo campaign winds down.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Matthew, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. Great conversation. Awesome product. I'm watching on my end. I already told you I got a little personal connection to this one. I can see it. You're probably going to get me to be a backer here, because I'm trying to get these devices out of my room, because man, it's so easy to just go, well, let me just check here real quick, put it back, and then now I'm up for an hour. So, but this is cool. So I appreciate it so much, and good luck with the rest of the campaign. And I hope you guys continue hitting a grand slam here, and good luck on the future products as well. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Jeff. It was a pleasure speaking with you. It's really fun. Yeah, it's awesome. Great to meet you.
Good meeting you too, man. Thanks.